What is up, everybody? The Monday version of the crossover. Hey, we got a special treat for you today. My boy, the guy that all of you know, whether you're watching live or watching on the replay, back actually first time on the crossover, but back by popular demand from the Kings pregame or postgame show, I should say. Connor Danzy. He's like our Woj and Brian Windhorse, like all rolled into one. So we're going to talk some NCAA hoops with him. Really interesting because both of our teams are in the Final Four. If you caught the weekend version yesterday, yes, the Aztecs are in. So we can talk about that, talk about the foul call, talk about Connor's UConn Huskies, and then Kings. Kings, magic number one. Do they officially make the playoffs tonight? All right, well, not going to make you wait any longer. I'm going to bring my boy in. Connor, what's going on, man?
Nothing much. A lot going on in the sports world, so I'm excited to dive in.
So much, man. Thanks for joining the show, buddy. A lot of people have hit me up and said, hey, we want to have Connor back. We want to have Connor back. So here he is live in the flesh.
Yeah, it's great to be on. I mean, I'll take any opportunity I can to come on the show.
Yeah, and you know what? I know Grant always says energy, energy, energy. I like your energy, bro. There's something even keel about it. Like everybody's energy is a little bit different. I told Grant that too. I'm like, Connor's one of those dudes that can get away with that. So, anyways, all right, man. We got to start NCAA hoops. Final Four is set. FAU, UConn, SDSU, in Miami. Let's start with your team, man. UConn, Miami. Tell me about that, bro.
Well, UConn's played the best out of any team in this tournament by far. They've blown everybody out by at least 15 points. And that includes a Gonzaga team that had the best offense in the nation. So they got 3 NBA guys. Jordan Hawkins is your streaky shooter, your primary scorer. You got Adama Sanogo, who's an NBA-ready big man who just has beautiful footwork down low, which I think is a lost art in the NBA now, especially. And then Andre Jackson, one of the most interesting players in the nation because he affects the game on so many different levels, and he's not at all really a three-point shooter or a jump shooter. He attacks the rim. He plays some of the most daunting defense I've ever seen, and he has vision on the court that is really unmatched.
So those three guys, you would say all three of them, they're probably NBA ready. They're ready to go to the next level. UConn started off hot in the start of the season. What happened? They kind of flamed out mid-season. Now they seem to be hitting their stride again.
Yeah, they were undefeated, I think, in the first 13, 14 games, and then they hit Big East play, and I think they lost 6 out of 8, which, I mean, the Big East, I think, is an underrated conference. I don't think it's talked about enough. You had teams like Marquette and Xavier, Providence, and Creighton, who made a deep run in the tournament. So, I mean, it's nothing easy to play in the Big East, especially when you have multiple games against the same teams. And I think that's what prepared them so well to succeed in March this year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you're playing in a conference like that, I mean that's big boy basketball. Arguably one of the best conferences in the nation. But Miami, they're kind of one of those hot teams, right? They've played solid all year. ACC arguably was down a little bit this year. But does Miami worry you at all if you're UConn, just because they are on a run right now?
Yeah, they definitely do. It was between them and Texas, and I was kind of scared of playing both. But Miami has Isaiah Wong and Nigel Pack, 2 veteran guards that can get it done. And they score the ball a lot, and you saw in their games against Drake and Texas, they can come back from basically any lead at any time. So that's what scares me a little bit.
Yeah, it was kind of a melodramatic game. I mean, it was a better game than most people gave it credit for. But it wasn't, the SDSU game, for instance, and we'll get to that in a second. The SDSU game, like, it was lit the entire time through. Maybe because the game was close the entire game. But that game, like, when Miami made the comeback, it just didn't seem like everybody was that into it crowd-wise. I mean, it could just be a crowd thing. but I thought it was a pretty damn good game and a good comeback.
Yeah, it was for sure. I mean, Miami, I think their team, their coach has been around the block for a long time, so it was cool to see an experienced coach finally get a good team and they'll have a chance to take them all the way. And then looking at the Final Four and stuff, you had Houston and Texas. They were both hoping to play with some home court kind of thing, and that really didn't work out because of Miami in both those cases. So maybe they're playing with house money at this point.
Yep.
Other than UConn, every other team has their first Final Four. So, I mean, the only team with real pressure on them is UConn in this situation.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Everybody is playing with house money at this point. Larinaga, Miami's coach. There's something about his style and the way he lets guys play and the way he coaches. It's like just roll the ball out and go. And he kind of spoke to that. He has confidence in his guys. You never see the guy too high. You never see the guy too low. He's never yelling at his players. And as a player, that makes a huge difference. I mean, some players need that coach that's going to be yelling at them and in your business like a Bobby Knight. Like, that's what gets them going. But then there's other players where there's just that respect between the coach and the guys. And you don't really see that so much at the college level. You see it a little bit more at the pro level because a pro coach is a lot different than a college coach in terms of what they do, but in how they treat the players. So anyways, all right, man, we gotta get to what I want to talk about. The SDSU Aztecs knocking off Creighton. Legendary game, back and forth, had a little bit of everything in it. Everybody is talking about the foul call. I've got my take on it. I had my take on it yesterday. I want to give you first dibs at it, though. What'd you think of that foul?
Yeah, first thought, it didn't look like much to me. Then you see the replay. You see the hand on his hip, and I think that's all that needs to be said. I think it's a clear foul. It may be a little ticky-tack, but in a situation like that, pressure on someone's waist like that can definitely affect the shot they take.
Well, okay, so yeah, exactly right. And so here, everybody that's saying it's not a foul, this is why you're wrong. First off, what Connor said is true. Hand on the waist, technically that's a foul. Is that called usually in those moments? Probably not. But if you go back and look, he fully extended his arm and he pushed Trammell, like literally shoved him. Trammell goes to the ground. And I can tell you, playing at the college level before, your coach in the huddle is not telling you, hey, make sure that you're drawing the foul here. If that would have been 6 minutes in the second or 6 minutes in the first half to go, and you may have been looking to draw a foul and you would have been a little bit more dramatic, but when a trip to the Final Four is on the line, all of your focus, no matter how hard you're pushed or whatever happens, especially when you are that close to the basket, is making the damn basket. It's not trying to draw that foul, because coaches will tell you you cannot depend on a whistle there. So I think the ending of the game was a little bit different. I thought some time should have been put back on the clock. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about next, because some of the Creighton players were protesting that the ball went out of bounds. The clock started ticking a little late. I mean, at that point, what is it going to do? You're going to add a few tenths of a second. I know you can get a tip in and stuff, but I think they got it right. I don't think the outcome of the game would have changed.
Yeah, well, look at the inbound play before any of those plays that we're talking about happened, where SDSU threw it away and the Creighton guy, laid it up, and I think that tied the game up. I mean, you didn't have enough time for something like that to happen. Like you said, Conman, it would have been a tip. But when you see the refs call the foul on the other end of the court, it makes you think, okay, maybe they would call the foul too, because they'd be throwing it to the rim 100%. And two of SDSU guys, they're just rim protectors. That's all they are. So anything could have happened there. But there's another aspect of that play nobody's talking about. The inbound on that play. Dude's foot was on the line when he threw that ball all the way down the court for Creighton.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's not something that the refs call very often. I'm not sure it happens very often, but I mean, Creighton was lucky to have even get a chance there, and their season could have ended like on something like that. That would have been horrible for them.
Yeah, yeah. And regardless, I mean, everybody's going to say I am a homer, so of course I'm going to say it was a foul, but it was a great game between two programs that deserved to be there, two debatably smaller programs, which really they're not. And I want to talk to you about that here in a little bit. But FAU, they're on a run, man. I personally feel FAU and SDSU will be the best game of that weekend. What do you think?
I would probably agree. I think they're both going to be great games, but you're talking about two teams that are trying to get to the national championship for the first time. You look at FAU, they're the Cinderella model for this tournament. Even though I think they were overseeded at a 9, a lot of people thought they could have been higher and stuff. They only had a few losses in Conference USA play, and they're basically blowing everyone out. And I think one thing I heard from someone that's interesting about that team is they can basically play your style of play and beat you at it, whether it's fast paced or if it's the really slow, low scoring pace that SDSU plays.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about their style of play. That's what worries me a little bit about FAU because they can get out and run. And SDSU, that's not necessarily the thing. SDSU is very methodical, grinds you down, use up the entire shot clock on both ends of the court. So it could turn into a little bit of a problem. But then on the other side of things, SDSU's got some great athletes too. So, they can be chameleons. They can play whatever game you need them to play. I mean, look at what they did against Miller in Alabama, right? So it should be a fun matchup. But here's the thing. FAU, their team has been together the longest. And when I say been together the longest, they have the most 4 or 5 year guys that have all played together. And we've heard so much this year made in the tournament about parity, right? And it's this huge deal that 3 first-time teams are in the Final Four. Well, if you look back, it wasn't until it was 5 years ago the first 16 seed beat a 1 seed. Before it was always the 4s or the 14s and the 3s, 5s and the 12s. But there's a lot more parity in college basketball now for a couple of reasons. I think one of the reasons is it's one and dones versus teams that have had guys that gel together that likely will not play beyond this level, but they're great college basketball players. So what are your thoughts on that, Connor, and the parity that we're seeing?
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with the gap between these Power 5 conferences and the mid-majors is getting slower and slower and smaller every year. Because these teams, they have coaches that are committed to their roster. They have a core of guys that have been together, like you said, for a while. And then they can utilize the transfer portal and get the one guy that they need to push them over the top. And then in March, when no one's talking about you, you just play your game and you can beat a lot of these big schools.
Yeah, that's a great point with the transfer portal. I did not hit on that. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, it's basically recruiting, right? I mean, that's what it is. You can poach a guy from another team, or a coach leaves for a different team. He can bring guys with him if he wants. So the other thing too, I think the talent pool in college basketball has gotten much better. Kids these days, they're playing AAU ball at a much younger age. They're playing basketball year round. And, basketball is not football. There's only, I think you dress 13 or 14 in the NCAA. Football, you dress upwards of 50 to 60. So those spots are very coveted, and you're seeing more talented players go to any school, Division I, that they can actually get a shot to play. So everybody that's in the tournament is really, really good, regardless of your seed.
Yeah, I mean, all these kids just want a chance to shine and make their moment, because that'll unlock another opportunity either to transfer up to a bigger school or get a scholarship and stuff. So, I mean, this tournament, it's pretty incredible. I think the whole thing with the seedings and stuff being so high and all these new teams in the Final Four, I think it's a little bit to do with March and how crazy it always is, but I think it's also due to the fact that, like, your lower seeds this year, the ones, the twos, I think they're a lot weaker than they have been in the past. I mean, you look at a team like Kansas dealing with all the issues with their coach and everything. Purdue obviously was, I think everyone was calling it, not in the round of 64, but I think a lot of people thought that they didn't have what it took. And then you look at Marquette, I mean, they were the Big East champions. They get knocked out in the second round. So I'm not sure what the answer is with these big schools and stuff, but a lot of them just can't seem to put it together when it matters the most.
No, they can't. I mean, it's inconsistency. You're always going to have it with college athletes. Again, they're not professional athletes as much as you kind of look at them that way. But you're right. The Blue Bloods have been down to a degree. I think that the conferences have been down. I mean, everybody's more focused on realignment and such. And I mean, at this point, we're getting to a point in college basketball where it's like, why not just shift to the NBA model where you've got two conferences? It just makes the most sense with travel. I mean, because we have schools that are going to the Big Ten that are on the West Coast, and vice versa. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk obviously about, I think it's UCLA and stuff moving around and everything. I mean, I don't know if it's good for the sport because you may lose a little bit of those rivalries with teams that would play every year, UCLA, USC, and all those good matchups and stuff. But a program as good as UCLA, I think they deserve to play in a better conference, just kind of like how UConn did, moving back to the Big East when they were in American the past few years.
Yeah, that's a good point. And here's something that we don't think about, and this is the basketball player coming out in me. For some of this, UConn, maybe not as much. I'll let Connor speak to that because they play in a little bit bigger of an arena. But, the Final Four is being held at NRG Stadium. That is not a basketball arena. That's a football stadium. And when you play basketball in a building that big, even for a small school like a St. Mary's or St. Mary's is a perfect example, where you basically in their arena they have a gym wall that is give or take 10 to 20 feet behind the hoop. So what I'm saying is, you play in a big stadium atmosphere like that, your depth perception is so much different shooting the basketball. Like the first time we were in a bigger place, and SDSU plays in an arena that holds 12,000, you're like feeling like you're shooting the ball regular, and all of a sudden it's like bouncing off the backboard from like along came Pauly. So there's going to be an adjustment period in the Final Four for some of these guys playing in a building that big.
Yeah, I think I heard about that issue when the NBA bubble happened and stuff. Players were talking about the perception and everything being different with no fans in the stands and stuff. So I wonder if that's kind of a similar thing, the way you're talking about, with anything can mess up a player's shot with the environment around them. It doesn't take much for just one thing to be off. The shot's not going to go in.
Exactly. I mean, it's so funny, Connor, because you just if you're playing in a bigger place and like you have more fans behind you, then it's like you're just flicking your wrist barely, and it feels like a different shooting motion. I can't put my hand on it. So I guess what I'm saying is look for maybe some slower starts. I mean, the teams are gonna have to feel each other out for sure, and it's a little bit different because they're gonna get some rest now. Usually, I mean, they play back or 2 games in 3 days. And now they get a week off, so there'll probably be a little bit of nerves, especially for the 3 teams that have not been there before. So let's go UConn and Miami. How do you see this one playing out?
I think it's going to be a fairly high-scoring game. Obviously, UConn has a pretty good defense, like we saw against Gonzaga, but Miami, probably other than UConn. They're one of the hottest teams in the nation. They've been scoring a lot, so I am a little nervous, but I think UConn right now, they're pretty much unstoppable right now. Unless they have a game where none of their 3-point shots are falling and stuff, it's going to be hard for them to lose this game.
Okay. All right. I'm with you. I think it's the lock of the Final Four. Final Four, not national championship. Final Four. That UConn moves on. I actually think this one will probably be the biggest margin out of the two games, margin of victory. So I'm going UConn as well. I just think the size is going to give Miami some problems. And I don't think the stage will be too big, but I think this is where Miami's run ends for sure. All right, man. Your sister, she's a UConn fan, and she went to SDSU. So you have a split house right now. So we're going to move and answer carefully. We're going to move to SDSU and FAU. What do you think about this one? How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, all biases put aside and stuff. I think it's going to be a really good game with FAU and the Cinderella and SDSU and their slow pace and their daunting defense. I see it as definitely a low-scoring game like SDSU likes to play, where the score could reach just like the 50s or the low 60s. But I do think that SDSU gets it done. One thing about them is that they can basically have any guy get hot on any night. It's a multitude of guys. They're pretty deep. They don't have that one guy, and obviously Bradley. But look in the Creighton game, I don't even think he was on the court for the last couple of minutes of the game. And it's just that next man up attitude. They have about 7, 8, 9 guys that can come in and be the guy.
Yep. So SDSU, everybody that's saying, oh, they're just jumping on the scene, you're wrong. SDSU, Coach Fisher took over this program when it was awful. They were giving away tickets, trying to get fans in the stands, trying to just do whatever to drum up interest. And Coach Dutcher has always been with Coach Fish. He was with Coach Fish in the Michigan days. They came out to San Diego together, and they rebuilt this program together. And it's taken this long for the team to get where they're at today, but it has been a very consistent program, and they have targeted a very specific type of athlete ever since Kawhi played at SDSU. And Coach Dutcher, he was just as much a part of what we did as Coach Fisher was. And Dutch is the defensive brains. Coach Fish was the offense. And for Dutch to take over for Fish, it was a seamless transition. And Dutch could have gone anywhere he wanted, and he still stayed at SDSU. So this program, it's been on the rise. Don't forget, they would have been a number 1 seed the year the tournament was canceled. But it may be even the number 1 overall seed if they had not lost in the Mountain West Finals that year. So that being said, I think SDSU grinds this one out. I think they bring a level of physicality that is very hard to deal with. And it's not an overwhelming physicality, but it can be overwhelming because it's for 48 minutes or 40 minutes. And a lot of teams, they don't do that. I mean, like, you feel like you can't breathe when you play against this Aztecs team when they are clicking on defense. From the time you inbound the ball, they are pressuring you all the way up the court. So, and they don't tire. Their stamina is ridiculous. So I think it's going to be a close game. But SDSU, I'm going to put one caveat in. To win this game, they have to be better from the free throw line. They have to. They have struggled from the line all year. You saw Trammell. He almost missed both free throws to send him to the Final Four. But I'm saying SDSU moves on, and we get a UConn SDSU final. The Danzy house will be split upside down and torn apart. All right, so let's hypothesize. SDSU, UConn, what's it going to be?
Yeah, I mean, that would be a dream scenario. That's what I had. I had one serious bracket where I did all my upsets and what I really thought. And then the other one, I just had UConn and SDSU in the championship. That's looking pretty good right now. But and that would be an incredible matchup. The offensive firepower of UConn against the defense and that pace of SDSU. It would be interesting to see how the fast pace and the transition team of UConn would combat against SDSU and their flow, that tire you out style. I mean, I think it'd be a really good game, but I'm going to take UConn because I feel like they're on top of the world right now, and I think that is the problem. Everybody's talking about them. They're the heavy favorites to come out of this. They're the school that's proven with titles and stuff already, so I think the pressure is on them and stuff, but I believe they have the players and the coach, an insane coach that gets you fired up to win it all.
All right, Conman's going UConn. All right, so much like you, for the Brome show, or a group of us guys, or a group of us clones, we have the one shining clone bracket, and truth be told, I didn't do my bracket until like 15 minutes before the tournament started, and I had SDSU in Houston in the finals, and I meant it. I thought this was the year, and I put SDSU as the champion. And then 2 minutes before the first game tipped off, I'm like, I can't do it because Houston's defensive minded too. They'll be playing basically a home game, and I flipped it. And my stomach is like in knots about that because my buddies are going to just kill me for that. And my SDSU fans going to kill me for that. But getting back to the game, SDSU has a very, very good memory. And the last time they made it this far in the NCAA tournament, it was the Sweet 16 in Anaheim. And Kawhi Leonard's SDSU Aztecs ran in to Kemba Walker's UConn Huskies. And it was a great game, but Kemba ended up just taking over. You guys went on a ridiculous run, Connor. UConn was not supposed to win the title that year. And you guys won. And so I think SDSU finds a way to grind this out. I'm not with Jim Rum. Jim Rum's like, this is now America's team because they knocked out Alabama and everybody's rooting for them. Bullshit. No. I don't think that's the case, nor do I want it to be the case. But there's just something special about this team. UConn is the more talented team. They have more NBA ready guys, but SDSU has the it right now. They just do. I don't know what it is, and it's really hard to fathom. And I get butterflies in my stomach saying it, but I think SDSU wins the championship.
That'd be pretty incredible. A team out of the Mountain West winning the title. I mean, that'd be a hell of a story. And I think UConn's run of just blowing teams out is pretty much over with these two teams, or potentially one if they lose that they're about to play, because I just don't think that you can just have a perfect streak like that go on forever. So, especially with the competition they're facing and how you feel about SDSU, it's definitely going to make me nervous until the whistle.
Well, either way, one of us comes up on top. Show comes up on top, so we're good with that. But I mean, just getting there is when you take a step back, just getting there is cool enough, right? Like you said at the beginning, everybody's playing with house money at this point. So anyway, so that's kind of the NCAA tournament. Anything else stick out to you over the Elite Eight, Sweet 16 weekend?
Not really. I mean, it's always incredible what can happen in these games. Any team can win. That's the beauty of it. I've seen a lot of people mention that this is like the worst Final Four ever and stuff. Like, how casual do you have to be just because you don't see your Duke, your North Carolina, your Kansas? I mean, I think this is one of the most exciting Final Fours because there isn't that one team that's supposed to just dominate all the others, and it's not the same four schools battling it out every year.
Connor, we hear that every single year, and you know which guy is saying that? That's my bracket is busted guy. That they say it every single year. This is the most, and if SDSU wasn't in it and it was another school that's never been there before, I would have the exact same opinion that this is the one of the more exciting Final Fours that we've had in a long time because for me, nothing is more boring than Kentucky, Duke, Louisville, just it's like the Patriots and whoever in the Super Bowl every single year. It just drives me nuts. And I really think this is the year that this becomes the new norm. I mean, if you look at the trends, again, look at you almost have one every year. And it started off with Butler, right? Butler has back-to-back Final Fours. And then it moves on to Loyola. It's not like I talk for a living. Loyola of Chicago, right? And they have their run. And then you've got VCU, who's had runs. And it's been trending this way with the smaller schools. So I just think this is the start of it, and I hope so. I really do, because it's going to make the tournament much more exciting.
Yeah, I think it's awesome for the sport if you have more teams being competitive and stuff. Obviously, it's those big schools and big players that make the NCAA the most money, but I think to see a more balance across the nation with the schools like the mid majors and the Power Fives, I think it's going to be really good for college basketball in general.
Absolutely. So, what did you think, or what do you think of the Rick Pitino signing at St. John's and that entire situation surrounding their exiting coach?
Yeah, Rick Pitino is a guy I'm really familiar with because he was at Louisville for many years when UConn was in the Big East. Always great battles against him and stuff. And then he had that scandal and everything, and then went to Iona. He did a lot of good for that program, and I think he deserves a job back with a big school like this. But in St. John's, that's a team that I think Pitino can come in and fix and make them one of the powerhouses of the Big East that they once were. And I think it'll be really interesting and stuff. I'm not too familiar with what happened. I think was it the St. John's coach didn't think that he should have been fired, and there was some wrongdoing there.
It wasn't that he didn't think he should be fired. They terminated him for cause, which means they would not have to pay him the remainder of his contract. If they just terminated him, they still owe him the money, or there would have been some type of buyout. And basically, the reason is he did not uphold, and I'm paraphrasing here, he didn't uphold the standard of the school, or is something along those lines, which is like, to me, completely ridiculous, because how many head coaches are fired because the team is not playing well? You could say almost every head coach that is fired for that reason is not upholding the standard of the school. And they're not fired for cause. It just feels like a chicken shit move not to pay this guy, to have the money freed up to pay Pitino.
Yeah, now that you explain it, it sounds pretty shady and like a low blow. But I mean, I think that obviously Pitino is the coach with the bigger track record and stuff. And I mean, firing for cause there, it's kind of strange. Like, what's the cause then if you're going to say that? I mean, that's what everyone's probably wondering.
Exactly. So, and there was another coach that another university tried to do this to them, and it went to mediation, arbitration, because he filed a lawsuit, and he ended up getting paid, I think, half of what was remaining on his contract. So I would expect this to break the same way. There's some precedent there. And I mean, as long as you're not doing anything grossly negligent, like having intercourse in an Italian restaurant, then there shouldn't really be cause for termination. But anyways, sorry, I had to throw a Patino joke in there, man. Do you listen to Jim Rome at all?
Not really. My dad, I think, listens to him pretty often and stuff, especially
Okay.
because Grant was the fill-in for him.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's a big deal in the jungle and with the clones is the whole Patino situation. It's one of those things that it's just never been let go, or they've never let go of it. And now that he's hired at St. John's, obviously it's all started over again. So Connor and I, we're going to talk Kings here in a second because I know that everybody wants to talk about the magic number. But before we do, I want to talk about Lamar Jackson. Could this situation be handled any worse from everybody involved? Like, seriously, this is ridiculous at this point, right?
Yeah, I was gonna bring it up. It's just become a dumpster fire at this point with him and
Right?
the Rodgers situation. I saw today a video of Harbaugh just saying, I think it was yesterday, how he wanted Lamar on the team. They were going to build the offense around him. And then an hour later, you see a report that Lamar Jackson requested a trade. And it said that he requested a trade on March 2nd. So, what are we doing weeks later and just hearing about this? And the whole thing with him being his own agent and fake agents and stuff that they were told not to contact. I mean,
Yeah.
a horrible situation for one of the NFL's best.
Well, it's also starting to make the NFL look bad too, because whether it's fair or unfair, people are going to group the NFL into this because they're involved. I mean, they put out a memo, like you brought up, to every single team, telling them not to talk to this business partner of Lamar Jackson's or not to negotiate with him. And Lamar came out and said he's a business partner in some venture. They're doing like this entire gym product, like whatever. Okay. But here's the thing, man. If you're Lamar Jackson, there is no market for you right now. None. No team is willing to put out what you want. And you are not realizing that Deshaun Watson's contract was an outlier. That contract is not being given out to Russell Wilson didn't get that contract, right? Aaron Rodgers wouldn't get a contract like that. I mean, I can go on and on. Kyler Murray. Um, Lamar's got to take a step back, number one. Number two, because of him being a restricted free agent, 2 first-round picks, if a team wants him, automatically have to come with that signing or trade, whatever, if the Ravens don't pick up the option. So now you're talking about mortgaging the entire future on this guy. So I just I don't get it because there's been I've heard of no interest for him. Have you heard anything, Connor?
No, I haven't. I mean, we have to keep a reminder that this is a former NFL MVP. He's not just some average player and stuff. I mean, he's one of the league's most brightest and up and coming players. But you talk about the 2 first round picks. Is that really what a team wants to give up to get this guy? And especially now with all the drama that's come and stuff. I mean, it's a shame with how good of a player he is that this is what it's come to. But do you think he put any of this on himself by not having an agent and representing himself?
Great point, Connor. And here's the other thing. If he was squeaky clean, and when I'm talking about squeaky clean, I am not talking about him as a person. I am not talking about him off the field. I am talking about how this situation was handled. If it was handled perfectly, if he didn't send out a tweet while his team's playing in a playoff game, you know, if he didn't do this back and forth, and I totally get that the Ravens have pie on their face too. But if Lamar handled this right, had an agent, I think he would have a better chance of getting closer to what he wants, and teams would be more willing to really entertain that because they're not worried about distractions. But at this point, like they always say, like business is business and play is play in the NFL. and players respect when other guys sit out because they're handling their business. They have to do what's right for their families. They don't, like hold it against them. But at this point, as an organization, you have to worry about bringing in Lamar Jackson at that high of a price tag and wonder if he's going to pull this same act if he's not happy there in 2 or 3 years. So I just, if he would have got an agent, Connor, yeah, it's going to cost him 10%, but I guarantee that 10% would have paid for itself because he would have gotten more money likely. So it would have been a wash.
Yeah, we're talking about a guy who you said he's got a lot of problems and stuff. He's obviously one of the most talented players in the league, but you said that he's not squeaky clean. I think he's not squeaky clean on the field at all, too, because after what we saw last year, he had a pretty inconsistent year and he made a lot of mistakes and a lot of decisions that were questionable. I remember him just against the Giants in one instance where he just completely blindly threw a pick across the field and the game was over. He just, instead of throwing it out of bounds or tucking it, he just threw it across the field and it got picked. I mean, that's not a decision you expect from an MVP of the league.
Good point, Connor. And to add on to that, hold on, let's go here just for a brief second, then we'll get to the Kings. I think it's fair to wonder if he is a little bit damaged goods. And hear me out here. He is one of those quarterbacks that's a running quarterback, takes a lot of hits. He's had some injuries. Those quarterbacks traditionally they're not your Tom Brady's that play, into their mid 40s. It's a different breed and their careers are shorter. So do you think there's apprehension from NFL teams? Yeah, he's got an MVP attached to him, but I don't think you'll probably see Lamar get another MVP. I guess what I'm saying is, isn't it more kind of downhill from here instead of, closer to peaking and being in your prime?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he likes to run the ball and stuff. He's not like Mahomes and Josh Allen where, I mean, you could say he's a dual threat. I mean, because he can throw the football. We all know that. But he's not as reliant and as talented as Mahomes and Josh Allen when they can just make any play they want, basically. And I think we've seen what happened with Tua, what happened with Trey Lance. Lamar Jackson kind of fits into that same category. And knock on wood, he hasn't had any insane injury like that. But, I mean, it seems like it's bound to happen with these running quarterbacks. They always seem to take one bad hit, one bad step, and it's all over from there.
Exactly right. It's gonna be interesting how this plays out. I think it's probably gonna get worse before it gets better, with all the shenanigans between both sides. And I guess there is, to me, it's the last thing I'll say, and we'll go to Kings. There's a little bit of like, if I'm Lamar, I'm pissed at the Ravens because I've given my body up for these guys. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks that would have said, I'm not going to take that type of punishment. I mean, there are quarterbacks that have said that, and he's done it. And now that it's time to pay him, they're like, well, we don't know, like, so who knows? We'll see how it pans out. Hopefully he does a smart thing and gets an agent to work on this trade stuff. All right, Kings, magic number 1. They can do it tonight. Minnesota's in town. Minnesota back at full health, beat the Warriors last night. What an interesting game last night, by the way. The Warriors crumbled in the last couple of minutes of that one. I don't care about the magic number. I don't. But what are your thoughts on the magic number, and do the Kings get it done tonight?
Well, first, I think that the Timberwolves kind of screwed the Kings last night by winning that game, or by losing. Or did they win or lose?
They won. Timberwolves.
Oh, yeah,
won.
so they had to lose for them to clinch. So, I mean, I think it's been a debate among Kings fans in the last couple of days whether they wanted some other team to take care of it for them, or if they could do it like they could tonight in front of a packed house at Golden 1. You talk about the magic number and stuff. I mean, it means a lot to me, not just because it's a number and stuff. I mean, it's a lot more than that. It's the first time that this team has clinched the playoffs since 2006, and I think the fans and stuff, they know that this is a good team and stuff, but I don't know if anybody else is like me, but I don't think it's really hit me yet or set in yet until I maybe see that they have clinched and I see that X in the standings, that they're going to make the playoffs, that like all the emotions and stuff are going to set in, like that this team is going to make it. I mean, I was 3 years old when they last made the playoffs. No recollection of postseason. So, I mean, it's a big day for me, for sure.
I understand that, and I totally get that. And maybe it's coming from me because I've lived through, numerous playoff runs, really lived through '02. But like, taking a step back, it's like this team's going to make the playoffs. Like there's no way they're missing the playoffs. So, like what's the point? But I get the guarantee, especially with a fan base that's been scarred the last 16 years and thought the team was leaving twice and, like ups and downs. So I get why you want it in writing. I mean, I guess it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to pay you $100,000. Okay, that feels good. Thanks. Well, can you put that in writing? Oh, well, we'll see. So I get that. But let's get to the bigger thing here. The Kings are going to be 2 or 3. I think they're probably going to be 3. And we have to watch what's going to happen on the back end because that's going to determine who they're playing in the first round because that's an entirely fluid situation. But I feel like Coach Brown, the training staff, they're in an impossible position right now, especially because of what you just said, about wanting, the magic number, having the X by it. There's going to be a very, very large part of the fan base that is don't do anything to get these guys hurt, put them in bubble wrap, rest them. And then there's going to be the other side of the fan base that's go for 50 wins, don't break the momentum. You're going to screw it up if you rest players. Where do you come out on it?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen with Mike Brown all year that he tends to leave the starters in my opinion, a little bit too long. That's how Sabonis got his thumb injury and stuff. And then it's only people after the fact that a player gets hurt that they start to question the coach's decisions. If everything goes smoothly and stuff, there aren't going to be a lot of comments about it. But, I mean, I think it's basketball. If you're in the game, you're going to get hurt at some point. You can't just be just waiting in a shell forever and not being on the court and stuff. I mean, I saw a good step tonight is that it looks like De'Aaron's going to be good to go after just one game missed. And I think the stars are aligning for this game tonight and everything. But like everyone else, I agree. I mean, the last thing you want is for someone to get hurt when these games don't have as big of meaning for us other than tonight, hopefully, than some of these other teams that are fighting for their playoff position.
Yeah, I hear you. Here's where I'm at with it. So I think you got to ramp down the minutes a little bit with some of the guys. You look at the Portland games on paper; those should both be wins with Dame out. But Portland traditionally plays Sacramento pretty well, whether Dame plays or not. So I think you ramp down the minutes, but I think you've got to keep those guys in. They haven't load managed all year. Maybe Denver is the one time you don't, unless, there's a way that you can, with a win, determine or get a more favorable matchup in the first round. So that's the only way I see it. Comment. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to step away for 1 minute. Give me your thoughts.
All right. I think that it's going to come down to whether this team is really ready for the playoffs and stuff. It's going to be playing at the right time and stuff. You want to be playing good. You want to be playing strong going into the postseason. It's all about momentum, like they say, and the Kings have had a lot of good momentum in the past 2-3 weeks, and you don't want that slowing down come playoff time because, like I said, momentum is a thing that I'm not saying that it's going to be more powerful than talent, but it can carry a team like we've seen through March. It's not the same in a 7-game NBA series, but I think all the fans of the Kings and the players, they know that they need to be playing well when it comes down to the last couple of games of the regular season if they want to do any damage in the playoffs. And we can talk about expectations for this team. It's been a lot of debate whether just making the playoffs and having home court advantage, that's just your season success there. Do they have to win a few games in a series? Do they have to win an entire series or 2 or 3? I mean, it comes down to your opinion and stuff, but Ryan, you're back. What do you think are the expectations in the playoffs? Do you think you win a few games, it's a success? Do you have to win a series, 2 series, or is it just kind of like we made it and now let's chill out?
I think you're playing with house money. Number one, I don't think there are any expectations. I think here's the problem. Kings fans are going to see how high they're seated, obviously, and there's going to be expectations. Like, they should beat this team. There's going to be disappointment at some point. This team is not winning an NBA championship. I'll just flat out say it right now on March 27th. This team is not winning an NBA championship. But, if they lose in the first round, Connor, if at the start of the season, I said, hey, Connor, you guys will maybe win 50 games, but definitely 45. You'll be a 2 or 3 seed, host a first round matchup, break the 16-year playoff streak, have 2 all-stars, likely at least one player that's all NBA, all first team rookie too. Would you take it? Would you sign here on the dotted line?
Yeah, I would ask you if you were okay in the head if you said all that at the beginning of the season, because I mean, it's pretty crazy. Nobody could have expected how well it's gone and everything, with how good the pick of Keegan Murray has looked to turn out. The guy looks like he's a 5-10 year veteran. He's a rookie. Can't wait to see in 3 or 4 years when this guy's in his prime. He's already one of the elite shooters in the NBA. What is he going to do for this team? How good is he going to be if he can develop that defense and that drive to the basket? I mean, it's going to be fun. This team, they're pretty young with the exception of Harrison Barnes. So this is kind of just the beginning of this group being together. Obviously, you're going to have moving pieces here and there, but to have Fox and Sabonis and Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk for the foreseeable future, I mean, that's definitely a thing to get excited about if you're a Kings fan. And it doesn't just have to be this year, but years to come.
What he said. Yeah, and here's the other thing too. The Kings are, first off, if I'm Doug Christie, or if I'm Keegan Murray and Doug Christie, I am attaching if I'm Doug Christie, I should say, I am attaching my hip to Keegan Murray. That is what Keegan is missing. Keegan is missing that chippiness, that aggressiveness. If Keegan gets that, I'm telling you, and he starts driving a little bit more, I don't want to put expectations on him, but Keegan could possibly be in the same realm of a Jason Tatum. I'm not kidding. The way he shoots the 3 ball, if he can add those other parts of his game, what he's done in his rookie year is ridiculous. And people forget you hit it on the nail. People forget this dude's a rookie. And the other thing too is this team, Sacramento, is gonna be a fun place to play basketball for a long time right now. With all the players you mentioned, Sabonis is gonna re-sign. That's gonna be an afterthought. He's gonna get a max deal. Don't worry about that. But there's going to be free agents that want to come here and play that brand of basketball, that want to play with Mike Brown. And I feel like we are 1 or 2 pieces away from being back in that 0-2 realm, the right pieces, but 1 or 2 away. And I've already heard people, well, LeBron's contract's going to be coming up, and no, that would be like the worst thing ever. Like, it would be stupid to bring in a LeBron James or somebody like that. It would throw off everything this team has. So this is going to be a pivotal. That's the second time I can't talk. It's going to be a very important offseason for them. The offseason is going to be just as important as the season playoffs. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, I mean, I heard you say something about free agents wanting to come here. When's the last time a Kings team could say that they're a target for players to come play for them? I mean,
2002.
Yeah, you look at
when you were 3.
you look at when you had guys like Aaron Aflalo, no offense to him, but being like your best signing and stuff in an off season. I mean, it's pretty incredible what it's come out to be. But a question I had for you: are you on the same page as me that this is the start of a really good core for the next 5-6 years, or do you think this season is just an outlier, like some people think, and that next year is just going to be back down?
No. This is the start of something very, very good. But what I will caution people about is this has been a very, very wacky Western Conference this year. The Western Conference has been injury-ridden, and not just injury-ridden in general. Like, the stars have been hurt all season. So no, the Kings are going to be a contender in the West, but next year if they drop to a 5 seed, a 6 seed, that would not alarm me whatsoever, assuming that everybody's healthy in the West for the majority of the season. I mean, we really haven't seen that, and so what I would say is the Kings being a 2 or a 3 with possibly 50 wins, that's an outlier. Kind of like the Deshaun Watson contract. So that's where I would say temper your expectations, but they're going to be here for many years to come. I mean, it could be beyond 6 years, Connor. I mean, they've done it the right way. They've been patient. You and I talked after the trade deadline. Everybody was thinking, oh my gosh, what if we don't make a move? And what do the Kings do? They basically they had a coupon in their pocket that said, oh, you can get this for free. If you don't use it, it's going to expire, in 2 days. They took a flyer, but they took it on the right flyer. They scouted out what they needed and realized what they got the best value for what they had with Kessler Edwards. And I think he can grow into a very important role on this team because of how he plays defense. So yeah, they're going to be around for a minute, Connor. And then I'm going to kick this to you really quick, and then we'll wrap up. Do you worry that the Kings have already peaked before entering the playoffs, and the other teams getting their stars back that have been kind of floundering are going to start hitting their stride?
Yeah, that's a little bit about what I was talking about when you stepped away for a minute with momentum and how important it is heading into the playoffs. You want to be playing your best basketball when the postseason starts, and I think the Kings have been playing their best basketball for the past 2-3 weeks, and I just hope they can continue that over the next week and a half, because if you start a little losing streak and stuff, and knock on wood, that hasn't been a quality of this team, heading into the playoffs, I mean, stuff like that can have a big impact on a 7-game series coming out of the gate, especially for a team that hasn't had playoff basketball in so long.
Yes, it can. Dude, you're spot on there. So it's going to be exciting one way or another. I guess it starts tonight. I understand the magic number, but I'm not pumped up about it. I'm sorry. Does that make me a bad Kings fan?
No, it doesn't, because I mean, I'm on the opposite end, obviously, but I mean, you can understand why and stuff. I mean, just hearing the word playoffs and Kings gives me chills and stuff, because I've never experienced that. I've never experienced the 0-2 in the glory days. So, I mean, I understand where you're coming from and stuff, but I mean, it's been a long time for you. I think you might change your mind a little when you see you're on the post-game show and all the fans are there and they've clinched the playoff spot.
Yeah, probably. You're right. I mean, it's one of those things that it's been out of reach for so long. that it's hard to get excited about, right? Like well, I shouldn't say it's hard to get excited about it, just it doesn't feel real. Like I don't know, it feels surreal. This whole season has, but it has been fun, man, dude. I can't thank you for dropping in and coming on the cross. We got to do this like once a week, man, if you're up for it, because this is great content, and you can find it on Apple, you can find it on Buzzsprout, obviously YouTube Live, and Twitter Live at Connor Danzy on Twitter. Connor, my man, dude, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. Anytime you want to do this, I'm up for it. It's always fun. That's what I love doing, talking about sports, talking about the Kings, especially when there's playoff implications. So, had a great time, and it should be really fun tonight to see what happens.
Amen, brother. Well, let's do this. We'll have to definitely hook up if UConn and SDSU are in the national championship. Maybe a weekend version of the crossover.
Sounds good. A few things have to happen before that, but
yeah.
hopefully it all works out.
All right, brother. Be well. I will talk to you soon. That is Connor Danzy. All right, y'all. This has been a fun crossover. Seriously, go watch the replay. Go check it out on Apple. You will enjoy this one. This was great. Connor, like I said, he is how is it Woj? Let's see. You got to put the Woj in front of it because Woj is the best in the NBA. So, Woj Windhorse, because those are the two NBA guys, really. No, Connor's the best. So go give him a follow. Fun episode, y'all. All right, that's gonna wrap it for the crossover. Little housekeeping, as always. Grant is gonna be on with Sean Salisbury here in just under an hour. So I will be back with him for that. Talk a little Kings, talk a little Aztecs, probably. And then I'll have the Kings pregame show on the If You Don't Like That channel. Grant will have the halftime and postgame show. I will join him for those. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. It's been the crossover. Big thanks to Connor Danzy. Catch him on Twitter at Connor Danzy. Ryno is saying so long for now.